was going to ask you those questions, but just to understand where we are in the legal process, is there a chance this gets repealed? Is there a chance this gets undone in some kind of way? And or will we see this at the Supreme Court level, the federal Supreme Court?
So it's a good question. There could be a petition for to ask the United States Supreme Court to hear this case. Certainly the Fertility Center has the right to petition the Supreme Court, and the question is whether it's going to be deemed worthwhile by whether there's a chance that the Supreme Court would hear this, and whether the Supreme Court would actually hear it. And I suspect that we will see a petition to the Supreme Court, but I have a feeling that the Supreme Court, that a majority of justices on the Supreme Court do not want to hear this case. That the only justices who would favor hearing a case like these are the ones who have taken more extreme positions, who are sort of, probably supportive privately of this decision. We just saw earlier this week that the Supreme Court declined to take a University of Virginia case on the area of affirmative action, where it looks like 6 of the 9 justices currently don't want to revisit an issue that they just did in the last term, where they already laid out some pretty clear standards on race-based college admissions and did not want to come back and turn back to the subject. And my suspicion is that the Supreme Court has no appetite to touch this. So I think that, practically speaking, this is the law of the land in Alabama, and anybody thinking about getting fertility services or providing them needs to treat this as a sort of a final decision.
This is the law of the land in Alabama. What does this mean? Let's talk about the couples and people who have embryos currently on ice in Alabama. What should they do? Does this mean they need to immediately proceed with trying to have children, to use the embryos? Should they move the embryos to another state? And can they even move to another state? Or is that something that could be criminalized under this ruling?
Those are some great questions. My general feeling is that we haven't yet seen there's been a fear, and I share it, that we may see the end of fertility centers feeling comfortable to operate in Alabama. I'm confident that if it comes to that, if that does happen, there will be arrangements made for the safe transport of embryos. And so I don't think that any parents with embryos that are currently there need to take urgent action to move out of state. So I think there is time to see what's going to happen, and I think there will, under any circumstances, right? Frankly, think about it. If centers did not transport them safely, then they would be committing a widespread killing under the definition of this new law. And on your second question I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. I apologize.
Well, I guess if a couple is assessing their options, is it should they immediately
travel,
have kids?
Right?
Should they immediately, or should they immediately implant, or what should they?
Yeah,
how
so
are they?
So I would say, look, on the issue of immediate decision, I think people have time to assess. Given that these embryos are given the sanctity of life, it's hard to imagine that people will be denied the opportunity or that there will be destruction. Just the opposite, right? The risks for the doctors involved would be something going wrong. So it may be that doctors will not want to handle them and be forced to transport them to another state. On the issue of travel is a really interesting issue. Alabama was one of the states that threatened, certain state officials threatened to prosecute women who traveled out of state for abortions. We've seen a hard pushback on that, and also it's very clear that the right to travel is a fundamental right that all Americans have, and that includes the right to travel for healthcare decisions. And I suspect that it appears that the threats being made by Alabama and other states, state officials in other states, to prosecute is really hollow. And that there really is it's outrageous that the people are being threatened in the abortion context for traveling to pursue their legal options elsewhere. And I think we're going to see the same. I expect the same here. Parents should not be afraid. But although this is the problem, we're going to see is that what's happening is a lot of cost is being imposed on these families. 1 in 6 families, trying to have children using fertility services is the number I saw. So it's really, this is